Go for the poles and the pools. Go for the oohs and the ahs. Go for the bubbles and the bubbly. Go for the story and the stories. Go for the win. Go to Ocean Casino Resort. Book your trip at theoceanac.com.
What's up, everybody, and welcome into the Philly Sports Power Hour with Bill Colarulo on this fine Wednesday in January 2024. Still got to get used to that. 2024, man. It's crazy to think that 1999 was 25 years ago, man. We are getting old. That is the truth. But we're here. We got a great show scheduled for today. We're going to be joined later on in the show by Kayla Santiago like we are every Wednesday. Want to talk to her a little bit about the Sixers, obviously get her take on what's going on with this Philadelphia Eagles team as well. Talk a little Fly Guys this morning. They had a tough one in Edmonton last night. But we are here live. This is the Philly Sports Power Hour live on the JAKIB Sports Network on YouTube. We are also streaming live on TikTok. If our TikTok crew wants to see Kayla Santiago after the break, log off of TikTok, head on over to YouTube, the JAKIB Sports Network. But what's up? I see my Power Hour crew starting to check in. Good morning to Chuck Hutton. Good morning, MC, Jason A-Team, Adams Exploits, Eagles fan. I appreciate all of you guys. Chuck Hutton, I appreciate the kind words, my friend. Really do. Thanks for being here. Thunderbird checking in as well. I don't see my man Wine Niners Wine yet in the chat, but I see Jimmy Wen checking in. David Laprati Jr. Mike Fittery. Appreciate all of you guys checking in. So before we talk a little Philadelphia Eagles, which obviously we do every day on the Philly Sports Power Hour, and I see more people strolling in, flexing, good morning. Apologize if I missed you guys. But before we start talking about our Philadelphia Eagles, let's talk about two other sports teams in this town. We'll start with the 76ers, who bounced back after a loss to the Chicago Bulls with a big win last night against the Chicago Bulls in that home and home, 110-97. But it really wasn't even that close. They absolutely blow out the Chicago Bulls with Joel Embiid coming back after a few games out with that ankle injury. And Embiid didn't miss a beat, man. Puts up a triple-double, 7th of his career, drops 31, 15 boards, 10 assists, and that is now 14 straight games for Joel Embiid with 30 or more points and 10 or more rebounds. Joel Embiid may be playing the best basketball of his career right now, guys. And he is fun to watch. This Sixers team is fun to watch. We've talked about it on this show before. I really am looking forward to talking to Kayla Santiago later on in the show about the 76ers team. She does a great job analyzing that team. But they're fun to watch. They're well coached. They're deep. Last night, their starting five, the first time they've ever rolled out this starting five, was Tyrese Maxey, Kelly Oubre, Nick Batum, Tobias Harris, and Joel Embiid. First time they start the game on a 28-8 run. They are fun, man. They are fun. And I've said it before, I like all the guys on this team. There's nobody on this team where you look at them and think, man, he's a me guy. He's selfish. You don't have Ben Simmons refusing to shoot. You don't have Ben Simmons and his Hollywood attitude. You don't have James Harden and his me attitude. This is a team. They are fun to watch. Tyrese Maxey smiling ear to ear all game, every game. And the best part is, after the games, you don't have Doc Rivers with that pompous attitude. How dare you question me? And now we're seeing how bad Doc Rivers actually was, because when this team is well coached, they're playing really good basketball. And I want to talk to Kayla because I still worry, as deep as they are, if they're missing that third star. Embiid is a star. Tyrese Maxey is turning into a star. But do they have that third piece to get them past the Milwaukee Bucks or the Boston Celtics? So we'll talk to Kayla when she joins the show later on. But we had 14 straight games now with Embiid getting 30 or more and 10 or more rebounds. 15 straight with him putting up 30 or more points. You had Maxey drop 21 last night. Tobias dropped 20 last night. And it was nice to see Jaden Springer getting some action last night. Young kid, hustles. Nick Nurse coaching him up on the sidelines over there. So, fun team to watch, man. Fun team to watch. Philadelphia 76ers. I keep saying it. Just keep winning games. Keep staying in the conversation in the East, and you never know what could happen at the trade deadline. What player may become available at the trade deadline for this team to make a move and maybe go on a little bit of a run. Get past that second round. And then let's jump over to our other team in Philadelphia, the Fly Guys, who had been on a tear, who had been playing good hockey, unfortunately, fall to the Edmonton Oilers last night, 5-2, and now that's 5 out of 6 games that this team has lost. So they were on a road trip. They went 1-2-1 on the road trip. They were battling sickness. Carter Hart was sick for a little while. Some other guys were sick. But now they're coming back home for Thursday night against the Columbus Blue Jackets. Maybe they can get back in the winning column. But they lose last night to Connor McDavid and the Edmonton Oilers. And if you guys are hockey fans, I know not a lot of you are, but Connor McDavid is a generational talent. The things he is doing, we haven't seen in a really long time in the NHL. And last night, he unfortunately gets 5 points, all 5 goals Connor McDavid had a hand in. He had a goal and 4 assists. Carter Hart tried to keep them in that game early, made some big saves, but unfortunately couldn't get the win. They lose 5-2 in Edmonton. Maybe they can right the ship, because that's now 1-3-2 in their last 6. Like I said, 1-2-1 on that road trip. So they need to get back in the winning column. Edmonton Oilers were on a tear, though. I mean, that's 6 straight wins for the Oilers. 14 out of the last 17 games the Oilers have won. So, but tune in Thursday night, Columbus Blue Jackets. Again, talking about well-coached team. We were talking about the Sixers being well-coached. This Flyers team's well-coached. John Tortorella has these guys playing hard. They got a good chemistry. Konechny's playing hard. Sanheim's playing well from the defensive position, who was almost traded in the offseason, which is crazy, because if the player on the Blues would have okayed the trade, Sanheim wouldn't even be here. But he's playing well. So those are our 2 other teams right now who are active in the city of Philadelphia, but no one really wants to talk about the Sixers or the Flyers. Everybody wants to talk about this Philadelphia Eagles team and what the hell is going on with a team that had Super Bowl aspirations to start the year, who started the season 10-1, looked like they were definitely going to be the 1 seed, looked like they were definitely going to win the NFC East, and how quickly things have changed. And we talked a little bit about it yesterday. Looks like the Philadelphia Eagles will be the 5 seed going into the playoffs. They do have a small chance to still win the NFC East, but that would require the Dallas Cowboys as 13-point favorites in Washington against a dreadful Commanders team who probably can't wait for this season to be over. Probably Ron Rivera's last game coaching the Washington Commanders. So unless the Dallas Cowboys fall to the Commanders, no matter what the Philadelphia Eagles do, they could win, they could lose, it doesn't matter. If the Cowboys win, the Philadelphia Eagles are the 5 seed. They can't be worse than the 5 seed. And they will only get the 2 seed if the Cowboys lose and the Eagles win. And I know a lot of people don't even care about the seeding. We've talked about it. Can this team beat anybody? Does it even matter what the seeding is? But there is going to be a playoff game, no matter what. There will be a playoff game. Every single one of us, regardless of how we feel about this team, will be tuned in on the edge of our seat come playoff time, hoping for this team to win. That's just how we are as Philadelphia fans. We're going to complain, as we should. We're going to be angry. We've all lost hope. But next week, when that playoff game kicks off, every single one of us will be cheering on the Eagles, rooting for them to beat, most likely, the Tampa Bay Bucks in Tampa. And we talked a little bit about it yesterday. If the Cowboys win, Eagles are a 5 seed. They would go on the road to face the NFC South winner. The NFC South winner will be the Bucks if they win on Sunday. It'll be the New Orleans Saints if the Bucks lose and the Saints win. But most likely the Bucks beat the Panthers. They're another dreadful team right now, whose owner is an absolute disgrace. I mean, if you've read any stories about Dave Tepper, especially after Frank Reich was fired, he just sounds like he is a horrible person to work for. Bad culture in Carolina. Now he throws a drink on a fan and he gets a slap on the wrist. Not even a slap on the wrist. They fine him $300,000. And at first, you take a look. Oh, man, $300,000. That's a lot of money. It equates to about $1 for everyday people. This guy's worth billions. $300,000 to him is basically like being fined $1. It's a joke. An absolute joke. You get a guy like Big Dom, and you suspend him for the entire season from the sidelines for really doing absolutely nothing. And then you have a guy like Dave Tepper, an owner of a team who throws a drink on a fan, and you give him $300,000 fine. You don't suspend him. If a fan had done that, if a fan had thrown a drink at Dave Tepper, what do you think would have happened to that fan? He would have been banned from the stadium and probably all NFL games for the rest of his life. But you take this billionaire who thinks he's better than everybody else, and he throws a drink on a fan and nothing happens but basically a $1 fine. Ridiculous, NFL. Absolutely ridiculous that the NFL decided to do that. Guy should have been suspended. Shouldn't have been allowed in the stadium, just like every other fan would have had to deal with. Fan probably would have been arrested. If the fan would have thrown a drink at Dave Tepper, they would have been arrested, probably would have been charged with assault, would have been banned for life from ever attending an NFL game. And you get this guy who's a billionaire, can do whatever the hell he wants. NFL dropped the ball on that one. Getting me all worked up about Tepper. That's why, guys, say what you will, as angry as we are about this Philadelphia Eagles team, as frustrated as we are, I always come back to that we are a very lucky fan base that we have an owner like Jeffrey Lurie. I know there are people who get on Jeffrey Lurie, who complain that he wants a passing style offense. I have my issues with that too, if he's putting his nose in what type of offense they should run. But Jeffrey Lurie is a good owner. This is a good organization, a really good organization, not only for what they do for the community, and they do a lot for the community, but it's a well-run organization. There's a reason why the Philadelphia Eagles have so much success and other teams continue to struggle. It does start at the top. Like any good business, the culture emanates from the top and comes on down. And that's why it's been such a surprise this season that there appears to be some cracks in that foundation of the culture. Something that's been so good, not only under Jeffrey Lurie, but with Nick Sirianni, with Jalen Hurts. They've had a good culture, so it appears. But what's going on right now with this football team? You're starting to see things that we haven't seen before, with leaks from the locker room and players refusing to talk to the media. Now, today, apparently, A.J. Brown will talk to the media. We'll see what he has to say. I doubt it's going to be anything relevant. I'm sure Bob Lang and the press crew for the Philadelphia Eagles has gotten his ear and told him what type of questions to expect and how to answer them, as they should. Bob Lang does a great job, as they should, get in his ear. But I'm sure it'll be a lot of, I'm just frustrated. We have to play better. We haven't played to our standard. We're going to stick together. All that stuff. They'll say all the right things. But I will say this. Even in spite of the fact that this Philadelphia Eagles team doesn't look good right now, even in the face of a culture that looks like maybe there are some cracks in the foundation, even with an offense that at times leaves me scratching my head thinking, what the hell is Nick Sirianni and Brian Johnson doing? I still firmly believe that fans who are calling for Nick Sirianni to be fired are extremely overreacting. I think it would be insanity to move on from a head coach who has gotten your team to the playoffs 3 straight seasons, first Eagles coach ever to do that, who brought your team to a Super Bowl last season, who at one point, him and Jalen Hurts had won 22 or 23 out of 25 straight regular season games. And I've talked about it before on this show about the Super Bowl hangover. And I feel too many of us are ignoring how real that is. I've talked about it before. Now, I'm not making excuses. Nick Sirianni's offense looks lost at times this year. They need to fix that. I would not be surprised if in the offseason they move on from Brian Johnson. I can definitely see them moving on from Matt Patricia and Sean Desai. But to call for Nick Sirianni's job, to me, is such an overreaction when you look at what this guy is trying to do. When we talked about the Super Bowl hangover in the offseason, we talked about how difficult it is to get back to a Super Bowl after losing it. And we're now looking at 57 Super Bowl losers. 57 Super Bowl losers, and only 6 coaches ever have been able to get their team back to the big game. 6 ever. And you're talking about legends. We've talked about this before. Tom Landry and the 71 Cowboys. Don Shula and the perfect 72 Dolphins. Bud Grant and the 73 Minnesota Vikings, the last NFC team to be able to do it. Dan Reeves and the 86 Broncos. Marv Levy and 3 Buffalo Bills teams in the 90s. And then Bill Belichick and Tom Brady in 2018. So for us to sit here and say that Nick Sirianni should lose his job because he hasn't been able to do something that only 6 coaches ever have done, and none of those 6 coaches ever had to do it after losing both their offensive and defensive coordinators in the same offseason. So I'm just as angry as everybody else about the job that Nick Sirianni has done this year with the offense and the cracks in the culture and all of those things. But to sit here and not appreciate the difficulty of trying to get back to a Super Bowl after losing it just doesn't make sense that you would call for this guy's job. But guys, when we get back, we are going to be joined by Kayla Santiago. I want to talk to her, obviously, about this Philadelphia Eagles team. I want her take on what's going on with Nick Sirianni, the offense, the defense, because there's a lot to talk about. But I also want to talk to her about our Philadelphia 76ers. She does a great job covering the Sixers. So we'll talk a little bit about that as well. So stay tuned, guys. When we come back, we'll be joined by Kayla Santiago. Be right back.
Go to get your game on. Go for the beers. Go for the cheers. Go for the hit and the hits. Go for the stakes and the stakes. Go to get your parlay on. Go to get your party on. Go for the scene. Go for the screens. Go for the gallery. Go for the win. Go to Ocean. Visit theoceanac.com to plan your visit.
At Pond Lehocky, we've recovered billions of dollars for our clients, and we're confident we can do the same for you. With over 250 years of combined courtroom experience, we've helped over 100,000 injured clients obtain some of the largest settlements in Pennsylvania. One conversation is all it takes to help you and your family get back on track. If you've been injured in an accident, give Pond Lehocky a call.
They're carving them up and good play calling along the way. First and goal at the 6.
On the field of life, First Trust Bank is there for you.
Champions on 3. 1, 2, 3.
Because Philadelphia dreams deserve a Philadelphia bank.
Underdog Fantasy has a way for you to play alongside your favorite football team all season long with their Fantasy Pick'em game. You pick between 2 to 5 players, select whether they'll go higher or lower on one of their stats, then do what you usually do on a Sunday, watch the games. You can win up to 20 times your money in a single game by going 5 for 5. It's a fantasy game, and the Sports Betting Show wants you to get involved. Go to UnderdogFantasy.com. When you sign up, use the promo code WIN, and Underdog will double your first deposit up to $100. That's UnderdogFantasy.com. Use the promo code WIN.
Do you stream on a Roku, Fire Stick, Google TV, or Apple TV? Now you can watch 6ABC 24/7 with the 6ABC Philadelphia streaming app.
And the big story on Action News?
Search 6ABC Philadelphia and start streaming today.
EAGLES, Eagles.
What's up, everybody, and welcome back into the Philly Sports Power Hour on this fine Wednesday in 2024. Still can't believe it's 2024. But a lot to talk about, a lot of good things and bad things going on in this Philadelphia sports city. So I want to bring on Kayla Santiago to talk to her about our 76ers, about our Eagles. What up, Kayla? Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. How you doing? A good game last night for the 76ers. So it made me forget about that Eagles loss just for a moment. I can say that. So started off 2024 pretty good after what I saw last night from Joel Embiid and company.
Yeah, we'll get to the Eagles, but let's start with some positive things to talk about. And we'll talk about that 76ers team. So a big win, bouncing back after a loss to the Chicago Bulls without Joel Embiid. Embiid comes back last night. And what did you see from him?
I mean, just absolute dominance. And everybody says, well, what makes an MVP? What makes the most valuable player in the NBA? And it's Joel Embiid, in my opinion, right now, because you look at this team, they lose by 13 against the Chicago Bulls, who are better at this point of the season, but they're not a very good team, to say the least. And then Joel Embiid comes back. He has a triple-double in the third quarter, and they win by 13. This team has a lot of good pieces. Tyrese Maxey is coming into his own, but they are at another level with Joel Embiid. And everybody says, okay, well, he can't play in the playoffs. Let me remind everybody that the MVP is a regular season award. So as much as I want the Sixers to get past the second round, that goes to the regular season. And just seeing how he's able to connect with this team, seeing the role players, it makes me super excited. And I can't stand when I get to this point of the season because it happens to me every single year. But we've talked about it on the podcast already. This is a team that's not expected to win. They're not expected to be a favorite in the East. They're not expected to go far because they don't have a Dame supporting cast or a Jalen Brown supporting cast. So I'm loving what I'm seeing. I feel like it's guys that are hungry, that really want to play, and it's really working with the group that they have right now.
Is this the best basketball you've seen from Joel? I know he's played a lot of good basketball in his career, but is this the best he's ever played?
That's really hard to compare just what he's been able to do. I feel like last year was definitely up there, but I will say that this is some of the best basketball I think I've seen him played, in the pure fact that it's just so consistent. I think it's really great when you can do it for 1 year, right? When you can win MVP. But the greats, they do it back to back. They're able to have really good seasons back to back. And that's what Joel Embiid is doing. Now, he had it 3 years ago when Nikola Jokic won the MVP. But now you can feel like when he comes in, it's almost an automatic double-double. And it's not a 10 and 10, it's a 35 and 15. So when you look at Joel Embiid, the consistency, I think it's the best point of his career right now. The biggest thing, of course, is he has to stay healthy. That's been something that's really hurt him later on in this season. But I think for the first time in a long time, he has a guard that's pesky, that wants to play, that's going to go after the loose balls, that's going to be on over almost every single night, and that makes Joel Embiid just that much better.
You know, when we talk about a player playing his best basketball, I don't think it is even a question that Tyrese Maxey is playing the best basketball of his career. How excited are you about Maxey?
I love it, and I've been able to see this from Tyrese Maxey for so long. I think the beginning of his career, for one, he was young. For two, when you bring in a guy like James Harden, you don't really know where Tyrese Maxey's role is. But I also, at the same time, I think James Harden really helped out Tyrese Maxey. As much as Sixers fans don't like Harden, I feel like it really helped out Tyrese, and had Tyrese be able to play off the ball, taught him that a little bit more. And I just feel like it was good to have that vet position for Tyrese, even if it was just for a few seasons. So it's exactly the player that I think the Sixers need with Joel Embiid to get them past the second round. And I know I'm thinking way ahead, but if you just look in previous years, Joel could be averaging 30 points in the playoffs. You have a guy like Ben Simmons who barely shows up in the playoffs. And then you have a guy like James Harden, who, by the way, 2 years ago had 2 points in an elimination game. 2 points on 2 shots, which is just absolutely ridiculous. So when you look at Tyrese Maxey, he's going to be the guy that comes in, that wants to play. And even if he's not shooting lights out and he can't score, he's at least going to be making those hustle plays that we haven't seen from Philadelphia 76ers guards in a really long time.
And Philly 007 in the chat says, Kelly Oubre was always the missing piece. You have been excited about the addition of Kelly Oubre from when it happened. Give us a little bit about Kelly Oubre, why you're so excited about that guy.
I completely agree with it. I think it's a guy that can really get out and shoot. He has a lot of length as well. His wingspan to be out on the perimeter is really good, and the Sixers really haven't had that in a while. And also just the perimeter defense he brings in. I feel like he's just such a good piece for the Sixers team. And we talk about depth. The Sixers have not had depth in such a long time, because when it comes to the trade deadline, they always trade those pieces away. And I feel like that's really, really hurt them in the playoffs. And now that they have a supporting cast like Tyrese Maxey, like Kelly Oubre, Nick Batum I really like as well, because I think he's a sharpshooter. And listen, Tobias Harris, I know a lot of people don't love Tobias. He's definitely not worth a max contract, but he's a guy that you want on your team when you have all these other pieces going on. So I love Kelly Oubre. I was really nervous when he was out for a little bit of time. I felt like the chemistry was going to be off, but I feel like he jumped right back in. And to be honest, I think he really loves the city of Philadelphia. Everybody has welcomed him because he works hard, he hustles, and he's everything you want a Philadelphia basketball player to be.
Yeah, Philly loves those kind of guys. He's perfect for this city. And last night, Nick Nurse goes with a starting 5 that we haven't really seen before. Maxey, Oubre, Batum, Tobias, and Joel. And they come out to a 28-8 start. How excited were you about that?
I expected it, because I think when they lose against the Chicago Bulls and then you have Joel Embiid back into the game, okay, that's probably going to happen. But I've said this all year long, Nick Nurse is the perfect coach for this team, because he really knows how to coach role key players. And I'm not talking about a guy like Joel Embiid or a guy like Tyrese Maxey. You look at a guy like Pascal Siakam, for example, when he was on the Toronto Raptors. That's a guy that's not necessarily a superstar, but he's definitely a star in his own right, and he can really coach those guys up. He also knows how to coach superstars. He had Kawhi Leonard on that team, and he knows how to coach in the playoffs. So I love what Nick Nurse is doing. I also think it's really challenging Joel Embiid. I think sometimes Joel Embiid likes to kind of sit the pace a little bit and slow things down. I love how Nick Nurse runs the ball, and I think that Joel Embiid's starting to love it too. And we already know Tyrese Maxey, that's his style. That's how he loves to play.
Yeah, you talk about Nick Nurse and how good of a coach he is. Last night he was coaching up Jaden Springer, who got some playing time. What can you tell us about Springer? Is he going to be a player down the road?
So I had the joy of covering Jaden Springer on the Blue Coats actually last year because he was on the team, and then he actually got assigned to the Blue Coats once again this year. Let me tell you, he's almost like a Matisse Thybulle type defender. He's not necessarily as tall and long as Matisse Thybulle, but he's definitely that pesky guard. I think he could be a nice role piece. He can also shoot a lot better than Matisse Thybulle, and he can drive a lot better. I think he needs to control his drives a little bit more. Sometimes he gets like a little bit too excited and drives to the basket when there's really nothing there and forces it a little bit. So I would like to see his kick-out game offensively get a little bit better, but he's a fantastic defender. And you kind of look at the trajectory of the Sixers picks and you say, okay, Matisse Thybulle was brought in for defense. They obviously give him away. And Jaden Springer, he's definitely a defensive guy, but I think he has a better offensive game than Matisse Thybulle did.
I was talking a little bit about it before you joined the show about, are they still missing that third piece? All we really care about, even though they're sucking us back in, can they get past the second round with the roster as it's constructed right now? Can they get past the second round, or do you think they need to do something at the trade deadline?
It's so tough because I know earlier in the season I said I wanted Zach LaVine, and now I absolutely do not want Zach LaVine. I mean, this team has convinced me that they can win some games. I think the thing about the Sixers is that you don't see it really with the Celtics or the Bucks, and those are the two teams that I worry about. You go in and saying, okay, they are so deep. They have guys off the bench that can really, really play. You're never going to replace Joel Embiid off the bench. I mean, that's just not going to happen. There's always going to be a minus there. But Paul Reed can come in. He can give some good minutes. You have guys like Pat Bev coming off the bench. And I think Nick Nurse can really get into some nice rotations once it comes to the playoffs. Now, the thing I do worry about is if they face the Celtics or the Bucks in a 7-game series. I think that can cause some things that we don't want to see, and I think that can be really tough. But, you know, Anunoby is a guy that I wanted. Clearly, he just got given away as well, so I don't think that's going to be a piece that they're looking out for. And a guy like Zach LaVine, to me, he's just going to be way too much to give up. Also, the Sixers have a lot of guys on two-way contracts that are really exciting. Now, I don't think they're going to get the call up for playoffs, but if they need to towards the end of the season and they could get with the Philadelphia 76ers, you might see them in the first round. Maybe that could be another depth piece. I think for the first time in a really long time, you might see the Sixers go 9, 10, even 11 into their bench, which is something you don't really see in the playoffs, especially in the NBA.
I'm Awake makes a good point, says that Jaden Springer reminds him of Kyle Lowry. That's a pretty good analogy right there. Man, if he could turn into Kyle Lowry, I'd be excited.
Yeah, I don't think his offensive game is there. I think he has a lot of growing to do. I think it's going to be interesting to see what he does throughout the next few seasons. I really like that they actually assigned him to the Blue Coats because, yes, a lot of people might think, well, he's going back to Delaware, but at the same time, he's getting playing time and he's the guy there. You know, he's the best player coming back from the NBA. So I think being able to see him play offensively and get minutes with the Blue Coats is super huge. And that's the best thing for these two-way guys, right? They might only get garbage minutes. I think Jaden Springer has really come in and got a little bit more minutes, but they also have a chance if they want more playing time to play with the Blue Coats if they get assigned down there. So I don't necessarily think he's there yet. I think defensively maybe, but I think Kyle Lowry could be a little bit more annoying. People could say, I love Lowry. He's a Villanova guy, but at the same time, when you play against him, you can't stand him because he's just all over the place. I don't think Jaden Springer is there just yet, but I could definitely see him growing into that later in his career.
So we're talking to Kayla Santiago on the Philly Sports Power Hour. She obviously does a great job covering the Sixers, really knows her basketball, but she can also talk Eagles. In fact, she does the halftime show and the postgame show right here on the JAKIB Sports Network every Eagles game day. So let's switch over to our Philadelphia Eagles, Kayla. First question, open-ended question. What the hell is going on with this team?
It's tough to watch. I don't really know what the answer is because I feel like every week we talk about it on the halftime and post-game show, and it's okay, well, it's this person's fault this week, and it's this person's fault the next week. And it's just so frustrating to watch. I actually said on the post-game show, I understand why A.J. Brown is so frustrated now, and we kind of went back and forth. Well, he's a professional player. Yes, I get it. But at the same time, I don't think A.J. Brown wants to talk to the media because I don't think it would be anything good to say. Right now, clearly the chemistry is not there with the team. The fact that you lose to the Cardinals, when we talked about this team early on in the season, we said, okay, they're 10-1. They have a lot to get better. And people called us crazy, right? But now you look at this point of the season, they are getting worse, worse, and worse. And they have the talent, especially on the offensive side of the ball. So it's just completely crazy to me how they're this bad right now. You know, they play really good first halves, and they played a very good first half against the Cardinals. but they can't complete games. It's like they go home at halftime, and then the second half is a team that I don't even know. I don't even want to see on my screen anymore. So it's really, really frustrating to watch because it feels like it's being a year wasted with the talent that they have.
And I've had this debate several times on this show. I've posted a lot of social media content about it as well, and some fans are coming at me that when I look at the defense, so let's talk about the Eagles' defense. When I look at that defense, I see a lack of personnel. I don't think it was Sean Desai. I don't think it was Matt Patricia. I think that Howie Roseman severely neglected some positions on the defensive side of the football that's coming back to haunt this team. What's your opinion about what we're seeing on that defense? Do you think it's coaching and scheme, or do you think it's a lack of personnel, or maybe a combination of both?
I think it's a combination of both, but if I had to skew one way, I think it's definitely a lack of personnel, because you make an adjustment in the coaching position and you say, okay, well, here we go again. It's even worse at this point right now. And the linebacker position is consistently something Howie has looked over, and it's just something you can't do in this league anymore. I mean, you look at the good teams and they have great defenses. They have a good secondary and a great linebacker core. And I get the secondary is young, but you can't sit here and tell me that Howie Roseman went into the offseason and said, oh, yeah, we just went to the Super Bowl last year. Our aspirations are to go to the Super Bowl again. And we're going to basically have a secondary where if one or two guys get hurt, it's a completely new and young team. You're not going to win games like that. That's just not how the league works. So right now, it really is frustrating. I think the defensive line, everybody was wowed by that in the beginning of the year. So they kind of ignored what lacked in the other positions. And now we're really seeing it hurt them. I mean, I honestly feel bad for Sean Desai at this point, because you come in as a new defensive coordinator and this is what you have to work with. He's not going to be a coach in his first year, a defensive coordinator that comes in and completely returns a whole entire team that's super young and turns them into a Super Bowl caliber team. That's not how it works. It's not like he's been in this thing forever with the Philadelphia Eagles. So it's frustrating that these positions keep getting overlooked by Howie Roseman, and now you're seeing it hurt them. And I don't understand why we consistently have the same conversation. Hey, Howie, you need to go get a linebacker. They're important in the league. It's consistently something we talk about, and it's consistently being ignored.
And this defense is terrible. I mean, you look at the numbers now, and it's been pretty much all season long. They're 23rd in yards against, 29th in passing yards against, 29th in points against, 28th in passing yards against, 30th on third down, 30th in the red zone. They're still 11th against the run, but when you look at the last 7 games, teams are averaging over 150 yards rushing. And I talked a little bit about it yesterday on the show. Well, what is going on with that run defense? Obviously, the linebacker position is a major issue, but it also looks like our defensive line has hit a wall. Jordan Davis looks out of shape. Jalen Carter looks like he hit that rookie wall. You have your edge rushers in Hassan Reddick and Josh Sweat both playing career highs in snaps. They look like they're starting to slow down a little bit. What are you seeing as the problem on why this team can't even stop the run anymore?
Well, apparently every running back that the Eagles face is Christian McCaffrey, because that's what it looks like every single week at this point. But you know what I think it is? I think this defensive line is super talented, but I think at this point, the whole locker room is lost. When you're losing games like this and the defensive side of the ball is really looking like that, as soon as you get past that defensive line, it's like, okay, well, anything can happen. It's really tough. It's also time of possession, though. I mean, we talked about rotations last year, and it's something I really love, the fact that Fletcher Cox would come in and not have to play every single snap because Jordan Davis was there. And I really like Jordan Davis, but you're right. He's slowed down a little bit of a step. But look at the time possession even of last week. The offense can't stay on the field long enough, and this defense is exhausted, and they don't have the talent to keep up with it. So I honestly just think the offense is not putting in the work for the defense to be able to succeed. When you're a team, and if I'm Nick Sirianni, I'm going in the locker room and saying, our one thing that we have talent in is offense. Make the offense work, and the defense can pick up. Right now, it's the other side. You're expecting this defense to be able to do a little bit of everything, stay on the field as long as they can, and then the offense comes out and does a little bit of nothing, especially in the second half. I just think they're exhausted. Maybe there's some underlying injuries there. We don't really know, but I just think the rotations right now aren't working when you have a defense on the field that long compared to your offense, and we saw that last week against the Cardinals.
I don't have much hope, as most fans don't, that this Philadelphia Eagles team can do anything. But I think the only chance they have to try to win some games would be exactly what you're saying. I think that offense has to figure out that their identity is to establish the run run the ball often, control the clock, win the time of possession battle, and keep the weakest part of your team, which is the defense, on the sidelines. You can't lose the time of possession battle the way they're losing it and expect to win a lot of football games with how bad that defense is. But you mentioned something about losing the locker room, and I want to talk to you about that because there's a lot of chatter now in the city that the Philadelphia Eagles should move on from head coach Nick Sirianni. Now, I've made it clear I think that is a massive overreaction, even though I don't think Sirianni is doing a great job. Even though we are starting to see some cracks maybe in that culture, I just think it would be an overreaction. But what do you think? Do you think that if the Philadelphia Eagles, let's say they lose in the first round of the playoffs, would you move on from Nick Sirianni this offseason?
You can't fire a guy that brought the team to the Super Bowl a season ago and then brings them to the playoffs the following year. It is super tough in the NFL to go back-to-back Super Bowls. I mean, it's nearly impossible. But I look at this team and I look at this coaching staff and I look at Nick Sirianni, and immediately in my mind, I say, okay, this is a repeat of 2018. Everybody wants to blame somebody, and trust me, I get it. I'm not saying Nick Sirianni is not to blame because he absolutely is. But what system is he being a part of? What shots is he actually calling? He says that, oh, well, he's the one that decided on Sean Desai and Matt Patricia. I don't think that's what happened. I don't think Howie Roseman is the guy that's talking at the podium, so Nick Sirianni needs to say whatever he's being told. But you look back to 2018, the Eagles go to the Super Bowl. Okay, they win the Super Bowl. Then the following year, all of a sudden, you look at Carson Wentz, who I think Jalen Hurts is better than Carson Wentz. I'm not comparing those two. But you look at Carson Wentz, well, he's not the quarterback anymore. You look at Doug Peterson, well, he's not the coach anymore because he doesn't have Frank Reich. And not saying he's doing a fantastic job at Jacksonville, but he's definitely doing a good job over there with the Jags. So I think this is just a system issue right now because you look at that and I feel like it's almost the same thing happening at this moment. Jalen Hurts is not playing well whatsoever. He's not playing up to par like he did last year. Is that the play calling? Is the offensive play calls by Nick Sirianni and Brian Johnson? Maybe, but at the same time, I just feel like this is being repeated way too much. And that makes me nervous looking at this Philadelphia Eagles team because what? You get a glory year for 1 or 2 years and then all of a sudden you want to fire everybody again? I don't think that's the answer. I really don't. I think you at least keep Nick Sirianni for next year. And then if for whatever reason, if it's a colossal fail, maybe then you look at moving on. But let's think about this. This coach literally brought this team to the Super Bowl to compete toe-to-toe with the Kansas City Chiefs. It's crazy to me that people are thinking about firing him right now. Do I think Brian Johnson is the answer in comparison to Nick Sirianni and them working together? I don't really know, but I also don't think it's fair to be like, hey, this is all the coach's fault, completely restock and get new coaches. That's not the answer to me because we saw the same exact thing happen in 2018. It wasn't the answer then, and it's not the answer now.
I agree with you. I mean, you could even go back to 2004 and look at Andy Reid after they went to a Super Bowl. The next year was an absolute disaster. Now, granted, there were some other factors there, but it is very difficult to come back after losing the Super Bowl and try to keep your team together. And I don't think it's talked about enough that Nick Sirianni lost both coordinators this offseason as well. Only 2 other teams ever in NFL history went to a Super Bowl and lost both coordinators the following year. And neither one of those teams made it back to the Super Bowl. You look at the 1995 San Francisco 49ers, went 11-5, lost in the divisional round. And then the 2005 Patriots, 10-6, lost in the divisional round. So it's not easy. But even though it feels like this season is over, it's not. No matter what happens in Week 18, the Philadelphia Eagles will play a playoff game, most likely against the Tampa Bay Bucks if they win this week. But there is an outside chance that the Eagles could still be the NFC East champions. You would need the Dallas Cowboys to lose to the Commanders, and the Eagles would have to beat the Giants. And we have a question in the chat from Drew Parker saying, should the Eagles rest players versus the Giants or try to win the division if the Cowboys lose? And I'm going to give you my opinion, and then I want yours. I don't care what the Dallas Cowboys do in that game. I don't care if the Cowboys are up by 30 in the first quarter. I'm playing the Philadelphia Eagles players the entire game because this team is not firing on all cylinders, and you're not going to figure it out by resting your players. If they were playing great football right now, I'd rest them for the playoffs. But I think they need to play. I think they need to try to figure things out both on the offensive and defensive sides of the football. I'm not resting my guys in Week 18. What are you doing?
If you're in the first round of the playoffs and you rest your guys week 18, I don't even want to watch the football game because at this point, there is no reason. The Eagles have not earned to be well rested in week 18. And I get it. Everybody's afraid of injuries, so on and so forth. But at the same time, you do not get better by just practicing. We even talked about it before the season. Preseason games, they dummy down on them. Guys aren't playing in preseason games anymore. And then the first 2 weeks of the season, they look like they're in preseason form. It's because, yes, you can practice as much as you want, but you really don't get into it until you get into that game speed. So you're telling me that the Eagles deserve a week off to go in the first round of the playoffs? Absolutely not. I don't think in any circumstance, no matter what the Cowboys do, the Eagles need to come out and play because guess what? The first time around, they didn't look good against the Giants. And oh, by the way, don't forget, they just lost to the Arizona Cardinals. So yes, they absolutely need to play. Frustration will boil. My brain will boil over if they do not play. And they're like, we're just going to sit our guys in week 18 because that's just absolutely unexcusable to me. And then maybe I'll look at actually looking at Nick Sirianni and saying, okay, maybe he's the issue if that's the case, because there is no way that you can look at this team right now. It looks like he's lost their locker room. You look at the press conference and they say, well, we're going to get better. We're going to get better. This is a learning curve. I'm so tired of hearing it. You don't get better by sitting your guys the last week of the season before going into the playoffs. When your team has zero momentum right now, they can't play a complete game. You need to play in week 18 to even have a chance of winning that first round playoff game.
Yeah, and I will say the only players I would rest, hey, Devontae Smith, I don't need to see him against the Giants.
Yeah.
If he's recovering from an ankle injury, that is a nasty turf up there, as someone pointed out in the chat. But if these guys are healthy, there's no reason that they should be resting. Now, most likely the Cowboys beat the Commanders, and then it comes down to, do the Bucs win their game? If the Bucs were to lose and the Saints were to win, the Eagles would open up on the road in New Orleans. Who would you rather see this team play? That's a tough one because the Eagles aren't playing well. But would you rather them go to Tampa and play the Bucs or go to New Orleans and play the Saints?
I would have to say the Bucs just because I feel like that stadium with the Saints in New Orleans is such a tough place to play in general. I think that the Bucs, they would have a little bit better of a chance. Now, they don't necessarily have the defense they had when Tom Brady was on the team, but they still have really good defensive pieces. It's really tough because, I mean, they just lost to the Cardinals. So when you look at teams to play, I sit here and I'm like, well, we said the Bucs should be easy, but the Cardinals should have also been easy. So you look at the Bucs team, I think it's a little bit better if they play them. I like my chances better if they play Tampa Bay.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. I think it'd be definitely an easier place to play in Tampa. I know some people are concerned because it's tough to beat a team twice in the same season, especially on the road. But I take my chances there. It's hard to even talk like that, though, because this team is playing so badly that it's hard to imagine, hey, we want anybody. They couldn't beat the 3-12 Arizona Cardinals. But, hey, I said it before you joined the show, as frustrated as we all are, as angry as we are, as much as we're saying this season is over, every single one of us will be sitting there watching the playoff game, rooting for the Eagles, saying, if they win, well, man, they got a shot in San Francisco. Everybody will be back on the wagon. It's just how we are in Philly, unfortunately. Or fortunately.
Yeah.
You know, I say
I don't listen. I try to be a realist as much as I can, and I love the Eagles, but I don't think this is going to be any fairy tale ending like it kind of was in 2017, where you face the Falcons and it's a super close game, and then you go face Minnesota, who comes off that fantastic win against the Saints, and you blow them out. I just don't think it's going to happen, and I do understand it's so hard to beat a team twice in a season. But if you play at San Fran, to me, there is absolutely no way they beat the 49ers unless in the first round they win by 2 to 3 scores, which I don't really think is going to happen. I get it. They beat the 49ers last year, but they were a much different team. And the 49ers, they have all the momentum going into the playoffs. And the Eagles, I mentioned it before, they can't get on any type of wave of momentum whatsoever. And we're this late into the season. So I would love to sit here and say I can believe in them if they get past the first round, but I don't really think so, because inevitably, with the talent they have on the offensive side of the ball, they should win in the first round. With the way that they're playing, I wouldn't be surprised if they lose, though.
Yeah, that's the sad reality we find ourselves in after such high hopes for this season. But, hey, anything's possible, I guess. Trying to keep it positive. I had Dave Spadaro on the show yesterday, so he was keeping it positive.
Oh, yeah.
being the Eagles insider.
Has to,
Kayla,
right?
Yeah, exactly. I appreciate you joining us. I'll see you this Sunday down at the Ocean Casino. We have at least 2 more times doing our JAKIB Sports game day shows. We know we'll get this week 18 against the Giants. We will get at least 1 playoff game. But I guess I'll get your prediction. Who knows what's going to happen, but do the Philadelphia Eagles beat the Giants in week 18?
If they don't, it's going to be really bad, if I'm going to be honest with you, because it was bad against the Cardinals. But if you lose back-to-back weeks going into the playoffs, there's absolutely no hope for this team. I think the Eagles do win this game. I think that they're going to bounce back. Do I think that it's going to be an easy win? No, I don't think so, because I feel like the New York Giants, a divisional game at the end of the season, no matter what, it's always super close just because it's the division rival. And the Giants, they don't have anything to lose at this point. I mean, they're going to go in, they're going to go guns a-blazing, and they're going to try to beat the Philadelphia Eagles and kind of knock them off their high horse. But I do think the Eagles come out with a win in this game. I'm going to say it's a close one, though. I'm going to go 24-21 Philadelphia.
Oh, man, it's crazy. I wouldn't even be happy with them just winning. They have to do more on offense. They have to dominate this game for all 4 quarters. Whether or not they will, another story, but that's what I'd like to see. See them clicking at least going into the playoffs. But, hey, we'll find out soon enough. Kayla, appreciate you making the time. You always do such a great job. I know everybody, one of my Power Hour crew, loves having you on. So I'll see you on Sunday. Have a great rest of the week.
You as well. Hopefully we're talking about an Eagles win.
Yes, sir. That's Kayla Santiago. Always a pleasure when she joins the show. I tell you guys, she does such a great job talking about the Philadelphia 76ers and obviously the Philadelphia Eagles as well. But very knowledgeable about the Sixers. Always love having her come on. Try to keep her coming every single Wednesday so we could talk about the Sixers, because this Eagles season may be over sooner than a lot of us thought. So hopefully Kayla will keep coming on so we could at least talk about our Sixers and maybe them actually getting out of the second round this year. Wouldn't that be great? Wouldn't that be great? But guys, one of the questions came up, and I see you talking about it in the chat, so I'm going to go back to it, about whether or not the Eagles should rest their players in Week 18. And I see some of you guys talking about the turf at MetLife Stadium, talking about, this team needs rest. There is some truth in that. You look at this defensive line, Hassan Reddick playing a career high in snaps, Josh Sweat playing a career high in snaps, Jordan Davis, Milton Williams, obviously Jalen Carter being a rookie playing career highs in snaps. So there would be some benefit into resting these guys. It's just that when you're not clicking and you're not firing on all cylinders, I don't see how resting these guys is better than trying to figure out what the problem is. Because who cares if these guys are well rested if they're not going to play well in the playoffs? I mean, I think part of what you're seeing may be the fact that these guys are starting to get a little bit burned out, but I think a lot of it is just they're not playing well enough. And I go back to the year, and I'm forgetting the year now, that the New England Patriots had their perfect run and then lost to the New York Giants in the Super Bowl. If you remember the last game of the season, the New York Giants were playing the Patriots. They had nothing to play for. Absolutely nothing to play for. But Tom Coughlin made the decision to play his starters in that game, and they played hard. And they played a great game. They ended up losing that football game. But I truly believe it was that game that gave that Giants team confidence and momentum heading into the playoffs. And it wasn't about resting their players. It was about trying to right the ship to head into the playoffs on a positive note. Because if you rest your starters this week, Week 18 against the Giants, does anybody have that positive, good mojo going into the playoffs? So I think you need to play your guys. Look, if they're injured, no doubt. If it turns out you're up in the third quarter, the Cowboys are up big in the third quarter, maybe you start pulling your guys out at that point if you feel good enough about, hey, we were clicking for a while, now we can get these guys rested. But I think you at least have to start the game with your starters to give them a shot to get that mojo right, especially on offense with them not clicking right now. And I say they're not clicking. We've talked about this. They look good at times. But then there's other times where they lack situational awareness, too many mistakes, bad play calling. But I really think a lot can be corrected if Sirianni and Brian Johnson decide to figure out the identity we've been calling for all season, which you started to see a little bit of the last couple of weeks, was establishing the run and then throwing off of the run. You have to win the time of possession battle. Your defense isn't good enough to be out there the whole game. If your unit on offense is as good as the Eagles should be, and then you look at your defensive personnel and it's as bad as we're all seeing they are, the best thing to do is to keep the ball in the hands of your offense, win the time of possession battle, and keep that defense on the sidelines. That's your only shot at doing anything in the playoffs. Your only shot. But guys, I appreciate my Power Hour crew spending this hour with me. I really do enjoy it. Smash that like button for me. Like we end every single Philly Sports Power Hour with a little Today in Sports History. A couple of weeks ago, we talked about Today in Sports History being the day that the Boston Red Sox agreed in principle to sell Babe Ruth to the New York Yankees. Well, it was today, January 3rd, 1920, that the Boston Red Sox owner, Harry Frazee, announced the agreement to sell Babe Ruth to the New York Yankees for $125,000 and a $350,000 loan. And that started the 84-year curse of the Bambino. And we all know he sold them because he needed money to fund his plays. The owner of the Red Sox needed to fund his plays. And the play was originally called No, No, Nanette. That was a non-musical stage play. And then it became My Lady Friends, or maybe it's the other way around. I think it was My Lady Friends that became No, No, Nanette. But could you imagine selling one of the best baseball players of all time to fund a damn play? No, No, Nanette. So today in sports history, January 3rd, 1920, was when the curse of the Bambino, which lasted 84 years, started. Pretty crazy. But guys, appreciate all of you. Smash that like button for me. We will be back here tomorrow on the Philly Sports Power Hour at 10 o'clock. Usually joined by my man Mark Farzetta on Thursdays, waiting for confirmation from Farzy, but hopefully we'll get him here tomorrow. And make sure you're following me on all social media platforms, right here on YouTube. You can go to Instagram, Twitter, posting daily content about our Philadelphia Eagles. So give me a like, give me a follow, send me some messages, engage. Love hearing from you guys. Appreciate everybody. Have a great day. And as always, go Birds.
Go for the pulls and the pools. Go for the oohs and the ahs. Go for the bubbles and the bubbly. Go for the story and the stories. Go for the win. Go to Ocean Casino Resort. Book your trip at theoceanac.com.